there was a saying that stuck with me. It went something like this: when people get scared, they run to gold. When they panic, they run to cash. And when they lose faith, they run to nothing at all. Now, I want you to think carefully about that, because I believe we are standing very close to the edge of the third stage. And that's the part most people don't understand. They think the threat is inflation or currency collapse, but I'll tell you something far more dangerous is brewing something that's going to hit gold first before it spreads everywhere else. So before we get there, I want to ask you to do something. Stop whatever else you're doing for a moment and think about your own savings, your own nest egg, your own sense of security. Think about where you put your trust, because what I'm about to tell you isn't about price movements or trading signals or any of those things you see flashing on television. This is about confidence. And confidence, once it disappears, takes generations to rebuild. I've lived long enough to see that pattern repeat itself. In the 1970s, Americans lost faith in their government's ability to manage inflation. In 2008, they lost faith in the system itself. And now in 2025, they're starting to lose faith in the idea that any currency, any store of value, can be trusted to hold meaning when governments and institutions act like the laws of arithmetic no longer apply. I've said many times that gold has no utility. You can polish it, you can look at it, you can wear it, but it doesn't do anything. It doesn't produce cash flow. It just sits there staring back at you. Yet, for thousands of years, it's been the emotional anchor for people who feel the ground shifting beneath them. Gold is not an investment. It's a mirror. It reflects human fear. And the more fear there is, the shinier it looks. But here's what's new. The fear we're seeing now isn't just emotional, it's structural. The entire monetary system is being stretched in a way that gold can no longer meaningfully hedge against. You can pile up all the bars you want, and it won't save you if confidence in the system evaporates altogether. I've been watching the numbers, and I can tell you with absolute certainty there's something terribly out of balance. Central banks, including our own Federal Reserve, have created a world where debt is mistaken for wealth and liquidity for stability. I call it the great illusion of modern finance. When governments print money faster than their economies can grow and investors keep pretending it doesn't matter, you can almost hear the ticking. It's not the sound of progress, it's the sound of a time bomb. And gold, for all its history, is sitting right on top of that bomb. You might say, isn't gold supposed to go up when things fall apart? Well, yes, that's what most people believe. But belief doesn't make something true forever. The problem is gold is priced in dollars. And the moment the dollar loses meaning, gold becomes just another shiny rock whose price nobody can agree on. In a true crisis, the argument won't be about whether gold is up or down. It will be about what up or down even means when every measuring stick is broken. I know that sounds dramatic, but I've seen it happen before. Not in America, thankfully, but in countries where faith in money vanished overnight. When that happens, people don't flock to gold. They flock to food, land, and safety. You can't eat gold. You can't grow crops with it, and you can't convince a hungry person to trade their last loaf of bread for a metal coin just because it glitters. So if you're wondering why I'm talking about this now, it's because I see the early signs again. The same complacency, the same blind trust in the Federal Reserve to fix it later. The same chorus of experts saying, don't worry, this time is different. I've been hearing this time is different for 70 years. It's never true. The truth is, gold's next big crisis won't come from investors selling it. It will come from governments deciding they can no longer tolerate its existence as an alternative to their control. They're already experimenting with digital currencies, programmable money, things that can be tracked, frozen, or taxed instantly. The world is moving from tangible value to virtual trust. And when that shift becomes complete, gold will go from being the refuge of the fearful to the relic of the forgotten. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying gold will vanish or that it has no place in a portfolio. I own some myself indirectly through companies, but I'm telling you, the time is coming when the very foundation of what gold represents, independence, security, resistance to manipulation, will be undermined by a force no one is ready for, the union of government power and digital technology. Once that happens, the question won't be, how much is gold worth? It'll be, is gold still allowed to be worth anything at all? That's the part very few people are prepared for. You see, we're entering an age where value will no longer be determined by scarcity, but by permission. And in that world, even gold will need permission to matter. Now, I can already hear some of you saying, Buffett's gone soft on gold, or he's finally joining the doomsayers. But I'm not predicting doom. I'm explaining a pattern. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, and I've heard this tune before. Every great economy reaches a point where its leaders think they can bend the rules of money without consequence. It always ends the same way. First with denial, then with inflation, and finally with control. Control is the last stage before collapse. And control always starts with the things people trust most, like gold. I've always believed that markets, like people, have memory. They forget the details, but remember the feelings. After 2008, the feeling was fear. After the pandemic, it was desperation. Now it's fatigue. And fatigue makes people careless. They stop asking hard questions. They start accepting easy answers. That's why I'm warning you today. Something terrible is going to happen to gold, not because it's losing its shine, but because the system that gives it meaning is losing its credibility. But before we talk about what exactly that something is, I want to take you back in time to a lesson I learned when the world thought it was ending, but in reality, it was just teaching us a hard truth about what money really is. Because to understand what's coming for gold, you need to understand what happened the last time America forgot the difference between value and belief. And that story, my friends, starts in 1971. I remember August of 1971 vividly. Sat before the cameras and told the American people he was suspending the convertibility of the dollar into gold. It sounded temporary, like a quick fix, but I've learned in business that nothing is as permanent as a temporary government measure. Government. From that moment, the entire financial world changed. For centuries, gold had been the anchor that kept governments honest. You couldn't print gold. You couldn't legislate more of it into existence. its scarcity imposed discipline. When Nixon cut that tie, he didn't just close a window in the Treasury, he opened the door to an era of unlimited promises. I was still a relatively young investor at that time, and I watched as people scrambled to understand what it meant. Most didn't. They still don't, because what followed was the gradual detachment of value from reality. At first, it seemed harmless. America was growing, companies were innovating, and the stock market was still the land of opportunity. But quietly, the incentive structure shifted. Governments learned they could spend what they didn't have. Corporations learned they could borrow what they couldn't earn. And investors learned they could speculate on things that didn't exist yet. All of that worked beautifully until it didn't. The 1970s gave us a lesson in inflation that every American should have written on their fridge. When the link to gold was broken, prices started drifting upward, slowly at first, then violently. Gas lines formed, home loans hit double digits. Ordinary people who had worked their entire lives saw their savings evaporate. Gold soared, of course. It went from about $35 an ounce to over $800 by the end of the decade. People thought they had discovered the perfect escape hatch. They believed that if they owned gold, they were safe from government folly, but they were wrong in a very subtle way. Gold didn't save them, timing did. When inflation cooled and faith returned, gold collapsed, and those who clung to it as a religion instead of a hedge lost nearly 2/3 of their wealth. The real winners weren't those who ran to gold. They were those who understood that trust, not metal, is the true foundation of value. I tell this story because the same dynamic is repeating itself now, only on a much larger and more dangerous scale. Today, we don't just have dollars unbacked by gold. We have debt unbacked by reason. We have assets whose value depends on the assumption that someone else will always be willing to buy them at a higher price. And in that world, gold feels comforting. It's physical, heavy, and ancient. It looks honest in a dishonest age, but it's precisely that honesty that makes it a target. Think about it. When a government prints money, it can track every bill. When it creates digital currency, it can trace every transaction. But gold operates outside the network. You can hold it, move it, and hide it. It's the last remnant of financial privacy. And that makes it inconvenient to those who want total visibility. I've spoken to central bankers who won't say it out loud, but they all understand this. The rise of central bank digital currencies is not just a technological evolution, it's a philosophical revolution. It's about control. And the only obstacle left between total control and total compliance is a shiny metal that refuses to obey. When I was younger, we had a saying in Omaha, if something can't be printed, it can be banned. That's where we're heading. The real threat to gold isn't volatility or competition, it's policy. A world where gold ownership becomes restricted under the pretext of fighting crime, stopping corruption, or protecting national interests. That may sound far-fetched, but history disagrees. In 1933, Franklin Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102, making it illegal for Americans to own most forms of gold. People were forced to sell their coins to the government for $20 an ounce. A year later, the government revalued gold to $35, effectively confiscating 40% of every holder's value overnight. That's not ancient history. My father was alive when that happened, and governments today are far more sophisticated. They don't need to knock on your door to take your wealth. They can regulate it out of existence with a few lines of code. If you think I'm exaggerating, how many of your assets exist entirely in the digital world? Your savings account, your stocks, your retirement fund, all numbers on a screen. You trust that screen because the system behind it works. But what happens when the system itself decides that certain assets, including gold, no longer belong in the equation? This is not about fear mongering, it's about arithmetic and incentives. Every government in history has eventually chosen inflation over discipline because inflation feels like magic. It lets you give people more without taking anything away until, of course, the bill comes due. And when that bill arrives, governments do what they've always done. They tighten control. They look for scapegoats. They create new rules, new currencies, new definitions of value. I believe the next global financial reset will not be triggered by a stock market crash or a real estate bubble. It will be triggered by a coordinated redefinition of money itself. When that happens, gold will not behave the way people think it will. It won't be a lifeboat. It will be a symbol of rebellion. And symbols, as history shows, make powerful enemies. Now, you may ask, so what's the alternative? If gold will suffer, if paper money will inflate, where does one find safety? The answer lies in understanding that wealth is not a static object. It's a flow of trust, energy, and productivity. You can't lock it in a vault forever. It has to move, it has to work, it has to grow. I've spent my entire life investing in productive assets, companies that create value, that solve real problems, that employ real people. They may rise and fall with the markets, but they endure because they adapt. Gold, for all its allure, does not adapt. It simply waits. The world we're entering will not reward waiting. It will reward participation, creativity, and resilience. And yet, I know many of you still feel safer clinging to the old belief that when all else fails, gold will stand tall. Well, I'm telling you, something terrible is waiting on that path. Not the end of gold as a metal, but the end of gold as a refuge. Because what's coming next will not be a crisis of currency. It will be a crisis of permission. And to explain that, we have to talk about the future of money itself, about a system that's already being built in plain sight, a system that will redefine ownership, value, and freedom all at once. Let me show you how it starts. I've always said that money is a tool. It's not the goal itself, but the instrument that allows the goals of a society to take form. And when you change the tool, you change the society. Over the last few years, governments and financial institutions have been quietly working on something called central bank digital currencies. Most people don't fully understand what that means. They hear the word digital and think it's just a modern version of cash, like the dollars in your online bank account. But this is something entirely different. A central bank digital currency, or CBDC, isn't just money you can hold on your phone. It's programmable. That means it can be tracked, controlled, and even switched off with precision. Think about that for a second. The dollar in your wallet is anonymous. You can spend it anywhere on anything without permission, but a digital dollar, it can be coded to expire, restricted to certain goods, or frozen for unusual activity. Now imagine what happens when that system is fully adopted. Imagine living in a world where every transaction is visible to the central authority, where your financial behavior can be monitored in real time. That's not science fiction. That's the direction we're heading in. And here's where gold enters the story again. Gold is the last shadow market in a world obsessed with light. It doesn't send data. It doesn't leave a digital footprint. It doesn't ask for approval. In a system designed to track everything, that makes it dangerous. The very qualities that made gold a refuge will soon make it a target. I know how governments think because I've spent decades observing how they respond under pressure. When an economy wobbles, they don't admit failure. They adjust the rules, they change definitions, rewrite the laws, and call it reform. When this new digital framework is in place, they won't need to confiscate your gold the way Roosevelt did. They'll simply make it irrelevant. Picture this. Gold prices will be quoted, but you'll only be able to trade through licensed digital channels. To use those channels, you'll need to link your identity. Taxes will be automatic, restrictions will be instant. Eventually, it won't be worth the trouble. That's how control works in the 21st century, not by seizing what you have, but by convincing you that using it isn't worth the risk. I've seen this pattern before. Every time power becomes concentrated, it tries to eliminate whatever it cannot control. When derivatives began to dominate the markets, regulators tried to contain them. They failed. When cryptocurrencies appeared, governments called them innovation until they realized they couldn't fully supervise them. Now they're designing their own version, wrapped in authority. The world is moving from gold-backed money to government-backed code. And once that code becomes the medium of exchange, the rules of economics will bend toward whoever writes the code. I'll tell you something that might sound simple but carries a lot of weight. Trust doesn't scale infinitely. You can't print it, you can't code it, and you can't legislate it. Once people begin to sense that trust is being replaced by control, the illusion breaks. That's when you get panic, not the kind that moves markets for a day or two, but the kind that changes civilizations. When I was young, I watched people rush to gold because they thought it represented freedom from central authority. It did for a while. But freedom is not a medal, it's a state of belief shared by millions of people who agree that something has value. When those same people stop agreeing, even gold loses its purpose. Now, let me give you an image to hold on to. Imagine the global economy as a giant balance sheet. On one side, you have hard assets, things you can touch, build, or grow. On the other, you have promises, contracts, derivatives, digital entries. For the last 50 years, the promise side has ballooned far beyond the asset side. Governments issue bonds, companies issue debt, and individuals take loans, all based on the faith that tomorrow's productivity will pay for today's comfort. That's the hidden danger. The promises now outweigh the real things by a margin that defies reason. Gold once served as a governor on that imbalance. But when gold becomes sidelined, when value is defined not by scarcity but by decree. The governor breaks, and when the governor breaks, the engine overheats. You don't need to be an economist to see where that leads. Look at history. Every time a nation removes the constraint on money, it expands credit. Every time it expands credit beyond its means, it creates bubbles, and every bubble eventually demands a scapegoat. I think gold will become that scapegoat again. When the next major monetary contraction hits, and it will, leaders will blame speculators for hoarders and market manipulators. They'll say people are destabilizing the system by holding gold instead of trusting digital currency. There will be regulations dressed as reforms, taxes disguised as fairness, and slogans about protecting national stability. All of it will sound reasonable at first. That's how control always begins. But here's what I want you to remember. You can regulate gold out of the markets, but you can't regulate scarcity out of the human condition. When governments attempt to replace natural value with artificial rules, they invite the very crisis they're trying to prevent. That's the irony that history keeps repeating. The next stage of this story will be the most revealing, because what comes after gold's decline won't be chaos right away. It'll be calm, a deceptive calm. The world will celebrate the new digital stability, the disappearance of volatility, money. And that calm will last just long enough for people to forget what trust really means. But when that calm ends, and it will, the collapse will be faster than anything we've seen. That's where we're headed. And when that moment comes, people won't be asking what gold is worth. They'll be asking whether anything is worth trusting at all. Still, I believe there's a way through this. There always is. The answer isn't in the metal or the code. It's in how we think about value itself. Before I give you that answer, I want to tell you a story that's been with me my whole life. A story about a lesson I learned, not from markets or charts, but from a small piece of candy. When I was a kid, growing up in Omaha, I used to buy packs of chewing gum and Coca-Cola from the corner store and sell them door to door. I wasn't thinking about inflation, gold, or monetary policy back then. I was thinking about value, not price, but value, because every time I knocked on a door, I learned something about human nature. If you handed someone a product they actually wanted, you didn't have to convince them. The exchange felt fair, natural, and simple. I learned that the only real measure of money is the willingness of two people to trust each other. Once that trust disappears, no currency, no system, no commodity can replace it. That's what I want you to remember as we face what's coming. The danger isn't that gold will lose its shine or that the dollar will fall. The danger is that people will stop believing that anything holds lasting value, and when that belief dies, everything else goes with it. You see, money has always been a story we tell ourselves about the future. It's a promise that tomorrow will honor what we do today. When governments start manipulating that story for short-term comfort, they poison the very faith that gives it power. That's what's happening right now. The global economy is addicted to easy money. It's like sugar in a child's diet. It gives you a quick burst of energy, makes you feel strong, and then leaves you weaker than before. We've reached a point where every slowdown, every minor shock is answered with more printing, more debt, more promises, but you can't feed a system forever on promises. Eventually it starts eating itself. That's what will happen to gold first. It will be the first casualty of the digital age. of control. The institutions that once used it to anchor trust will now treat it as competition. Its value won't collapse overnight. It'll erode gradually through policy and perception until it becomes irrelevant in the daily life of the average person. And yet when that moment comes, I don't want you to despair. I want you to look deeper, because this isn't just about gold losing relevance. It's about something new being born in its place. The future of money will not belong to metals or codes. It will belong to productivity and integrity. It will belong to those who create value that others can see, touch, and understand. In a world where algorithms dictate prices and machines execute trades, human trust will become the rarest commodity of all. So if you ask me what to do, I'll tell you this: own things that last, own ideas that matter, own skills that multiply. Don't bet your future on symbols of wealth. Bet it on the ability to generate value no matter what system you live under. When I invest, I'm not just looking at numbers. I'm looking for stories of durability. I'm looking for people who will still be standing when the lights flicker, companies that solve problems that never go out of fashion. People will always eat, drink, travel, communicate, and one hope, Parsh. If you can serve those basic human needs, once you'll outlive any crisis of currency. There's a line I've repeated so many times, people are probably tired of hearing it. When others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. That's not about timing markets, it's about emotional discipline. The world right now is greedy for illusion and fearful of reality. So this is the moment to be brave enough to face reality and disciplined enough to ignore the noise. The terrible thing that's going to happen to gold isn't an accident. It's a mirror reflecting what's already happened to us. We've traded discipline for convenience, scarcity for abundance, and independence for dependency. And sooner or later, the bill for that trade always comes due. But America has a way of rediscovering itself when it's backed into a corner. We've survived depressions, wars, oil shocks, and revolutions in technology. We've seen trust break and rebuild, faith shatter and return. That's the part I want young people to hear. Don't chase shiny objects. Don't build your future on speculation. Build it on service, skill, and integrity. If you do that, you'll never have to fear what happens to gold, the dollar, or any other currency, because real value, once created, can't be confiscated by any government or algorithm. I'll leave you with something my father told me during the Great Depression. He said, Warren, you can lose your job, your savings, even your house. But if you keep your word and keep learning, you'll never be broke. That's still true. The world is changing faster than ever, but human character doesn't go out of style. Gold may fall, currencies may shift, but honesty and diligence will always rise in value. So when you hear me say something terrible is going to happen to gold, understand what I'm really saying. I'm saying that we are entering a test of faith in money, faith in leadership, and faith in ourselves. And the only way through it is not to run from it, but to rebuild the kind of trust that gold used to symbolize. In the end, gold isn't what keeps civilization standing. People do, work does, integrity does. So keep your focus there, and when the storm finally comes, you won't need to hide behind metal. You'll stand on something stronger, something that shines brighter than gold ever did.